people are no longer able to distinguish human from chatbot communication in any meaningful way.
1, 2, 3, 4.
Welcome to the Automated Lawyer Podcast. My name is Dan Schnurbusch. I am here solo today. John is out on a vacation, so I'll be kind of riffing today a little bit about AI. AI in everywhere is kind of the talk of the town, so to speak, that, it's making a tremendous amount of waves. And I think there's a lot of curiosity that people have about what is it? How does it work? What are its capabilities? How much do we need to worry about this? So I want to kind of give kind of an overview of what I have learned. So I have gotten obsessed with this ever since ChatGPT came out. And have been completely obsessed with AI and what is the role that it's going to play in law, integrating it into our practice in a robust way, and kind of seeing where we can take it in more advanced use cases. And it's been a lot of fun for me. So I kind of wanted to break this down for attorneys like myself, just to kind of put it in language that we can understand. Without a technical background. And hopefully some of this will be useful, at least kind of getting your head around the different terms and what we're actually talking about in this space. And then how we can use it as attorneys to be better attorneys, to also anticipate change and kind of get ready for what's coming. So let's back up, right? It's November 30th, 2022. And we see the launch of ChatGPT 3.5, right? This is the first version of the chatbot that kind of started taking the world by storm. At this time, nobody had conversational language models on their radar at all. Nobody had, other than people who were interested in that space. But this is where we started seeing, multi-million users signing up for this application overnight. And, I remember when I first started using ChatGPT, when it first came out, it was not trained. It was not refined like it is now. Like you would ask it questions and it would completely hallucinate stuff. Like I remember asking it, like legal questions, and it would give me an answer. And I'd say, "Where'd you get that answer?" And it'd be like, "Oh yeah, I had a conversation with Jim Smith down the street in St. Charles on August the 14th. And like, I look it up and like Jim Smith, like is close. Like there is a guy named Jim Smith, but like it is different location and stuff. But it passed the stuff off like it was real. It was a true conversational AI at that point. It was just saying kind of whatever seemed like what would have been a conversationally appropriate response. But it had no guardrails on it yet. It wasn't. It didn't have any of the fine tuning and training on the back end that it does today to kind of moderate some of that hallucination to some extent and kind of rein in and structure the responses. Today, when you ask a question, you get a very structured bullet point numbered format response in most cases, unless you ask for something else. But it wasn't like that at first, right? It was kind of the Wild West, and very quickly they kind of started implementing a lot of safety and security procedures. But it was just 4 months later that they launched GPT-4, and that's kind of the main operating model that most people are using today is a GPT-4 model. Well, now it's actually probably mostly 4.0 model, but it's still under the umbrella of the 4. And this is when things got real serious. Okay. GPT-4 can pass the bar exam in the 98th percentile. I want that to kind of sink in. The 98th percentile. Odds are very good, statistically, that's significantly better than you did. 98th percentile. That means that the model outperformed 98 out of 100, every 100 lawyer test takers, human lawyer test takers, okay? And this is the untrained version of the model, the model that is not customized for law practice use cases, for case law databases. It's not given access to any of those like case law databases or anything like that. This is just the raw, model that was given these tests, okay? In long before March of 23. There are newer tools that have since adapted these models in really serious ways. The one I have my eye on right now is called Harvey AI, that was launched earlier this year, where they basically worked with OpenAI to customize the GPT model to a case law and statutory and regulation database, and so much more than that. But how is that gonna shake out? We'll have to see. But the thing I want you to take home is this was only 4 months after the initial launch of ChatGPT that we saw a major improvement. And GPT 3.5, keep in mind, I think was only scoring like in the 20th percentile on the bar exam. So in 4 months, we're launching a new model. Now they've probably been training it for a while, but I want to just kind of underscore like how quickly things are moving for the next couple minutes. They launched their API in June of 23. So a couple months later, now those ChatGPT models could be baked into any software in the world. And so if you've been paying attention to a lot of the like industry agnostic tools, outside of the legal specific space, because for some reason they're slower to adapt, large language models, LLMs, ChatGPT, Anthropic, they've been spread out everywhere. They've been started to get injected into every software application you can think of, that is primarily non-legal, and some legal tools have done it as well. And this is all due to their API access. In February of this year, so what is that? Less than a year later, 4 or 5 months, we see the launch of multimodality, so that we can input not just text anymore and get out not just text, but we can input images and input audio and output images. So you can put in text and get out an image, or you can put in an image and get out text, or you can put in audio and get out a transcript of that audio, and vice versa. This is where things start to get really powerful, right? Is when we essentially have a thinking agent that can intake a variety of different kinds of information and output that in a variety of different formats. Really crazy stuff. And this is in less than a year, a little over a year from the launch of the initial application, right? New models started coming out. Within the year following that, we started seeing models from places like Google with the Gemini stuff. We started seeing places from Anthropic launched their Claude model, which in many ways is actually better than ChatGPT, especially their newest model, which is ridiculous that somebody could launch something better than that at a competing company in less than a year. Google's model, kind of hilariously, even though they have more resources than God, is not quite as good in most cases as the OpenAI and the Anthropic models, which is kind of interesting. Apple is reportedly working on their own model. Earlier this year, Apple announced that they're going to be bringing ChatGPT to iPhones. So now it's not just going to be dumb Siri. You're going to be able to talk to ChatGPT as part of your iPhone experience, or some modified version of ChatGPT. Earlier this year at the Spring Conference in OpenAI, they showed off their new 4.0 model with features that are not yet released. They're coming this fall, where you can communicate with spoken language to a voice assistant that is based on a newer multimodal version of the GPT model. And if you watch the videos, I encourage you to watch the videos. Just Google 4.0 demonstration videos, and just let your mind be blown at how authentic and realistic these voice engagements sound between the person, the human speakers, and the AI. It is like, if you've ever seen the movie Her with Joaquin Phoenix, like he would be envious of the new models. Scarlett Johansson's AI is going to have some competition for Joaquin Phoenix's heart at this point, because it is just incredible. And at the same time, you have other companies like got to remember the name of it, Figure One. If you Google like Figure One OpenAI demonstration, you'll see the state of the interplay between language action, language interpretation, and physical robots. Figure One launched a robot that can basically take natural language commands and even make decisions on its own about using this robot body to manipulate things in three-dimensional space accurately. It's freaky. It is freaky, folks. Like, just check it out. Figure One OpenAI. Just Google that, and you're just gonna be your mind's gonna be blown a bit about where things are at. It is moving really fast. So that's kind of a little timeline of how quickly things are moving. And all of this has happened within, since November of 22. And I'll talk in a little bit about some of the other models that have come out, like HeyGen, where they can generate realistic looking video footage from text prompts, or places like 11 Labs, where they can generate realistic sounding audio, human voices that from nothing more than text prompts. And they have all open APIs. They can be worked into your workflows and used in amazing ways. There's people launching now artificially intelligent sales assistants and like customer service representatives that sound like real people. It's super freaking weird, folks. But this is where we're at. So I want to keep talking about AI and how you can use some of this stuff in your practice and bring this down to earth a little bit. So let's back up and get kind of a kind of context of what the heck we're talking about. So like when I'm using the terms like LLM, ChatGPT, API, artificial intelligence, AI, what am I talking about? Like, how do we position ourselves in the universe of computing to kind of understand where we're at and what's going on? So think of it like a hierarchy. So start at the top, we've got computer science. This is kind of the broad field that looks at computers, algorithms, data processing. Within that, we have a subfield of computer science called artificial intelligence, or AI. This is how people kind of conventionally refer to, or colloquially refer to, a lot of this stuff. This is really still a pretty broad umbrella, where we're talking about trying to get computers that can perform tasks that would normally require human intelligence. Things like recognizing images or playing games, we've heard of like AlphaGo, and language understanding. So like LLMs and language stuff is kind of underneath this umbrella of artificial intelligence. Okay. Now, within artificial intelligence, so going down another layer, we have machine learning. You've probably heard this term like bandied about in your everyday life. But what is it? So machine learning is a subfield of AI that involves training algorithms to learn patterns and make decisions based on data, like predicting stock prices, or recognizing speech, or recommending movies, things like that, where we're learning from data and then making decisions and predictions based on it. This is like why you're on YouTube and you can see, 50 more videos that are related to what you're watching, even though there's nobody at Google like programming, telling you, or serving that up to you. It's an algorithm or a model that is predicting and determining what you might want to watch. Okay. Now, within machine learning, we have the concept of deep learning, which is using so-called neural networks, which are like complex patterns of models that are laid on top of each other and enable systems to perform complex tasks like self-driving cars, or real-time language translation, or advanced image generation. Tools like DALL-E, which is a part of ChatGPT now and OpenAI, which generate images, and Midjourney, you may have heard of, is a really powerful image generator where you just give it a natural language prompt. There might be a few quirks to it that you want to add to improve the output, and then it'll give you an image, matching kind of what you asked for. So these are based on the use of deep learning models that are a kind of a subset of machine learning, very smart networks of networks to interact between these complex data patterns. Now, within all of this, we have natural language processing, which is kind of where we start getting into this large language model, into this ChatGPT space. So this is a subfield. Natural language processing is kind of a subfield of AI and machine learning that focuses on the interaction between computers and human language. So, just like, medical malpractice is a subfield of personal injury, and personal injury is a subfield of tort, and tort is a subsection of civil law. This is kind of the hierarchy that we're looking at. Computer science, artificial intelligence fits inside computer science. Machine learning, deep learning, natural language processing, these fit into artificial intelligence. Okay. And this NLP, or natural language processing, this is where we're trying to give computers the ability to use and understand human language. So how do we summarize text or categorize text? How do we talk to humans and seem believable? We are at this point way past the Turing test. We're way past that. Okay, at this point, people are no longer able to distinguish human from chatbot communication in any meaningful way. So kind of in this natural language processing space, we also have, or as a sub piece of this, we have large language models. So these are so-called LLMs. We're not talking about, uh, masters in laws in this case. We're talking about LLMs, large language models in this area. So these are a specific type of deep learning and natural language processing that are designed to generate and understand human language based on these huge data sets. So things like GPT, BERT, ChatGPT is a specific instance of an LLM. Okay, so this is an LLM that OpenAI created, right? So they took these natural language processing systems, these LLM systems, and trained them on huge quantities of data from the internet, from private sources, from all over the place. They just fed that language, that text, into this enormous database. And we'll talk about like what the structure of those databases are in a minute, because it gets really interesting how we can use this stuff. So that's what's going on. That's where LLMs and ChatGPT kind of fit into this system. Okay, is a very specific subset of AI that we're talking about here. And so there are different areas of AI and different functions in other spaces, but this one is focused on language, and increasingly now things like video and audio, but is all through this valence of language. How do we interpret that audio? How do we generate the audio or that image from text, from language, and things like that? So we're creating a system for interfacing with computers using natural language rather than having to like write complicated code to get it to respond a certain way. Okay. So the use cases for this technology have gone kind of all over the place, right? We can automate documents, the creation of documents, in a variety of different ways. We can automate the review of documents with specific references to, like what should I be looking out for in this contract? What are the provisions that are unfavorable to my client? We can do that sort of thing now. We can automate all kinds of short routine documents. We can automate AI research tools. Now, some of these are not as good as others, right? And that's why I'm keeping a close eye on this tool Harvey that was announced in April of 2024, because it's apparently been trained in a totally different way than previous versions of the model, like case text and other stuff. So we'll see what that means. We'll see what that means. Right now, I think it's primarily geared as an enterprise solution, but very cool stuff. eDiscovery and data set review. So we can have models now that can interpret and draw conclusions across very large volumes of data. So like documents or client emails, or we can help synthesize eDiscovery. Now, are we at the point where we can completely rely on the model? Probably not. Me personally, I have not used these eDiscovery tools, but I know they exist and I know what their functions are and what they're supposed to be able to do. Now your mileage may vary. Your firm may implement these tools and find out they don't work quite as well as you'd hoped. I don't know, right? But they will only get better, right? Because circle back to the beginning of what I started talking about is how fast this stuff is changing. Like we just got a 4.0 mini model. So 4.0 came out earlier this year, major watershed improvement than the GPT-4 model. 4.0 mini came out like a week ago, okay? And this mini model is only a little bit worse than the regular model, and it's like 1,000 times cheaper than the main model, right? It's almost free now to interact with these models through the API and integrate them into your workflows. I think it's like 15 cents per million tokens, which is like 600,000 words, which is like multiple length novels in input and output before you even generate a 15-cent charge, right? So just absolutely bananas. So what does this mean in like broader terms? For our practices, it can mean things like, efficiency. We're able to, execute on things that used to take hours, we're able to do in seconds. Productivity can be improved because there are certain things that, humans can do now so much faster. There's always going to be a role for humans in a law firm, or in most types of law firms, at least. So there's always got to be somebody to push the buttons and interact with the clients and things like that. And so we can make an individual person radically more productive and more capable through especially the combination of AI tools and workflow automation. Um, and this can lead to things like cost reduction, accuracy in outputs, consistency in outputs, and higher levels of client service, especially as you look into things like AI chatbots and things like that, where they can always get answers to their questions immediately. So a lot of attorneys have now. Let's talk security and ethics for a minute, as blah blah. But it is an important factor, and a lot of people are very concerned about the ethical implications, the confidentiality implications of where's my data going, how is it being used, um, and I've read through the terms of service of at least OpenAI and how they're using this stuff, and as long as you're either on a an enterprise plan or an API plan where you're accessing through Zapier or Chat or Make or something like that, or through some other way, they don't train, they don't use that data to train their models. So, any proprietary information is not being used to train. It's all stored securely on their systems. Now, if you look into their terms of service, they say stuff like, well, um, you know, it, uh, we will have access, our team will have access to troubleshoot, bugs and errors and stuff like that on the back end. And yeah, that's true of every software you're using, right? So if you're worried about the data exposure in, talking about information with ChatGPT, you should also be worried about the data exposure of storing your documents and stuff in Clio, because a lot of the exposure levels seem very similar to me. And that being said, I'm not a data security expert. I'm not an ethics expert. It is, I am more than comfortable within our own firm to be using these kind of tools. Um, but you should consult with ethics counsel and ethics rules in your state about what requirements there are. And even in some cases, the jurisdictions that you're practicing before, and judges. A lot of federal judges have standing orders on the use of LLMs, um, at least as it pertains to like generating like work product, like briefs and stuff like that. But honestly, so far I've found that that's probably not the most useful application of these models anyway, kind of interestingly. And I'll talk more about that in a few minutes. But so those are some of the benefits. I mean, we're talking about kind of radical revolution in the way that we run our firms. Um, and I think we need to get ready for this stuff, guys, because this stuff is only getting better, and it's getting better fast. And, although attorneys are, I think a lot of attorneys are being excessively dismissive of this technology. The people in, Silicon Valley who are building incredible tools are not, right? They're building amazing stuff that as the technology improves, we need to be careful about that. We need to keep an eye on what is the effect that these things are going to have. Especially people like transactional attorneys, people who are generating words as part of their main service offering. Our responsibilities are going to be shifting a whole lot more to trying to give good advice, and our advice is going to be a lot more supported by AI. Our decision making should be supported by AI. I already use it all the time to think about how to address a given circumstance. Maybe maybe I want to think of other ways to make an argument. Can you help me think of some other ways to argue this point? And boom, there you go. You've just now got 10 other arguments you can throw into your brief, right? Um, and so you should already be supporting your thinking with some of these tools. Open a free account on ChatGPT. You can access the 4.0 model, the newest model, for free. So see what you can do, see what it can do at a very basic level. And so let's talk about some of the kind of levels of progression as you get into this AI stuff. If you are interested in learning about AI, like what does this look like, right? At level one, I'll call it level one, is kind of just off the rack talking to the chatbot. You open a ChatGPT account, you open a Claude Anthropic account, you're talking to the bot. You're just saying, hey, can you generate me a blog post, or can you give me some ideas on a marketing campaign, or can you interpret this spreadsheet and help me derive interesting insights? Can you manipulate the information in this spreadsheet? Can you write me a letter to the client that says this? Cool, helpful. But you can even do more mundane thing, like upload a picture and say, what is this flower? And it will tell you. Or what should I eat for today? Here's a picture of my pantry. Can you make me a recipe based on this food? And it can do that. Um, you know, I need to make a meal plan this week that takes into consideration my dietary constraints. Boom, there you go. Uh, you're watching a movie. Who was, Queen Elizabeth's, husband or whatever, and give some historical context without having to thumb through Google for 3 hours. So there's a lot of like fun use cases. I pretty much entirely replaced Google, like Google searching stuff, with just asking ChatGPT. Okay, I mean that's kind of where we're at now. You don't instead of like thumbing through websites to try and find an answer to your question or reading 12 pages of family history before getting to the recipe on the recipe website. Like you can just ask a question and it'll just give you the answer. Now, if it's a complicated answer or related to something that is very domain specific, you may need to do more prompting and give it more context and do more stuff to get a more reliable answer. And even then, sometimes it still might hallucinate and make up fake stuff, or just not give a great answer. That happens sometimes, or not drill into the question at the level of detail that you want. And that happens sometimes, right? But there are better ways to do this. And so remember, we're only at level 1. So level 2 is writing much more detailed, structured prompts to try to get a much more precise output. So we do a lot of this, especially in our automated workflows, where it's like, for example, we have an automation where, and this is almost more level 3, but like, let's say you wanted to write a blog post or a LinkedIn post or something, but you don't want it to just be the generic output that it would normally give you. Well, what you can do instead is inside the prompt, you can say, hey, I'm going to give you some information and lots of rules about how I want you to write this before you write it. Okay, so then you can do stuff like give it examples of previous posts that you've written that were successful and ask it to model the style or the syntax or the voice and things like that. You can ask it to incorporate specific things in its output. Make sure you use a statistic in the hook, or make sure you use include this hyperlink to this web page, or make sure so you can get a lot more specific, and it can handle a lot of detail in the rules that you're giving it. Okay, it's very good about kind of navigating, even complex prompting. So this is what people call kind of like prompt engineering, where we're trying to get more detailed about the questions that we ask of the model so that we get better output, right? This is very powerful and goes a long way in getting stuff where you want it to be. So like, if you want to generate a letter that's specific to the case, you can do stuff like give it the client's name, give it the client's address, give it the general background about the case so that it has that context when it's writing the letter, right? So it sounds like it knows what it's talking about. And in order to do that, you just have to give more detail and more in your prompt. Okay. That's kind of level 2. Level 3 is taking prompt engineering and asking questions of the model and now automating it as part of your workflows. So you've heard us talk about make.com and Zapier and integrating AI into your workflows. So maybe you have, for example, really, really simple one. We have a Zap that when a case converts from our CRM into our project management system, the notes from the intake call are ran through ChatGPT and summarized into bullet points to make it way more readable. And then it's that summarized bullet point that is used as kind of the main case description in our project management system. Okay. Now we still retain the original notes in like a note record, but the actual description and kind of summary of the case is now written by AI, because now we can summarize my long form rambling notes into something that's actually much more readable and usable. And we did that with just a little prompt through a Zapier step where it's like case converts, then it goes to ChatGPT and passes through that text. Different text comes out. We drop the new text in the new field. Very simple. Like it's a 3-step Zap. It takes probably 5 minutes to make. Okay. So that's what I mean by integrating AI into your workflows. Now, here's another example. One we use for the podcast. When we save the MP4 file of the video file of the recording of the podcast to a certain Google Drive folder. That gets sent through Claude, which is a different model. And we have a very detailed prompt with lots of examples of previous social media posts and things like that. Very detailed prompt. And we say, hey, can you write some LinkedIn posts, some Facebook posts for this clip from the podcast? And that's where it will output that text. Okay. And that is a much more detailed prompt, but it's outputting that text and then passing it into our social media scheduling software. Still a fairly simple automation. I think there's like 5 steps in that one. And we use make.com for that one. Still not that complicated. Very, very powerful. Anytime we need to take text, manipulate it, interpret it, do something to it, and then output or generate something and output something else. Very, very powerful by injecting kind of intelligence into your automated workflows. Now, in my firm, we use this in a whole bunch of other ways. So all of our inbound mail is automatically scanned by Earth Class Mail. Those PDFs are automatically sent to ChatGPT and parsed, and that will generate a label for the PDF. It'll generate an assignee from our firm, so it'll determine who the best person to triage that document is. It will determine what case it belongs to by identifying things like the decedent's name or the cause number from the letter or document that we're getting, so that mail can then be automatically assigned to the correct case file in our system. It will automatically interpret court emails and automatically schedule court hearing dates that we get through our Missouri CaseNet court email system. Many states have these, and if anything you could have an assistant or a junior associate do, ask yourself, is there a way that we could potentially automate, like sending this through an AI? And the answer is often yes. So, we get automated tasks. So let's say the court sends an email that says, letters of administration in this probate case have been issued to your client. Well, we have an automation that detects that email, then moves the case along in our case management system, generates a bunch of tasks for the next step, and then sends a notification email and text to the client that says, congratulations, you've been appointed. Here's a letter that it gets automatically generated, giving you some information about next steps on what to do. Okay. This is what I'm talking about, right? This is the API access to the system that is just bananas. So this is where I think the vast majority of people are going to kind of cap out, but there still are 2 more levels to this. Level 4 is fine-tuning a model. So what we're doing is not as hard as it sounds, but you basically put together a giant spreadsheet of fake prompts or pretend prompts of, if I ask you this, then this is the kind of output I want to give you to give me, as a way of kind of teaching the model specific answers to certain types of questions. So if you're finding that when you ask a certain question a certain way, you're not getting the kind of answer that you want, or maybe it's too long, or maybe it doesn't focus on the right things, you can create a giant spreadsheet or database of examples to kind of adjust the natural output of the model. And that's called fine tuning. This is something you can do through OpenAI's API system. This is kind of a much more advanced use case. Most of the time, not necessary. Most of the time, you can accomplish anything. Most of the time, whatever you would need to do through fine tuning, you can do through just writing better prompts and tweaking your prompts. If the model is making mistakes or not giving the right output, most of the time you can just tweak your prompt and you'll start getting a better output. The last stage, and this is where a lot of these software platforms are getting really powerful, is embedding. Embedding in a vector database. Oh, whoa, what the hell is that? Right? So I'm going to try to explain this. This is important, and this is huge. This is where a lot of law firms are going to be able to draw a lot of value when you get to the upper ends of, starting to integrate AI into your practice. So what is vector embeddings or embedding in a vector database? So first, let's start with what is a vector. A vector is it's a math object. It's a series of numbers. You can think of them like coordinates on a map. But instead of representing coordinates on a 2-dimensional object like a map, or a 3-dimensional object in the case of the globe, they are representing coordinates of a piece of data inside of multidimensional space, right? Because we're in math land now. We're not in physical land. We're in math land. And vectors can represent pieces of data with hundreds or thousands of different dimensions to them. Okay? So that's what a vector is. It's a math number representation of a multidimensional position of data in a database. Okay? And how do we use this in AI? Well, we use it in this concept of embedding. So an embedding is a kind of vector that is used specifically for, in most cases, embedding language. So text language, how does it relate semantically, so meaning-wise, to other words in the database? And so like cat and dog might be close to each other vector-wise. The vectors might not be very far apart, but cat and car might be much further apart. Their vectors might be, much further apart in this multidimensional math world, math universe. Okay, and so that's kind of how the database and the language model is able to determine the similarity between words or concepts. So like it may know that, for example, if your prompt has the word city and France in it, it may be more likely to return the word Paris, because it knows that most of the time in its data set, whenever it saw the words city and France together, Paris was probably somewhere in that mix, or was more likely to be somewhere in that mix. So its vector, or its embedding vector, is closer to the terms city and France in that multidimensional space. Okay, so coming back to like Earth for a minute, this is how we create these models. We have these giant data sets with these embeddings that allow the model to kind of give a more probable response to a question, okay, by comparing and contrasting the language that you input with the language in its system, okay? So how do we use this as attorneys? Well, the way that we use it is by embedding text in these vector databases, like contracts, like case law, like statutes. And what does this allow us to do? It allows us in the future to be able to ask questions to the model, and then the model can go check the database to get responses to your question that are not based on its training data, but are instead based on your database. So for example, last week, I built a bot that embeds the entire Missouri probate and trust code in a vector database. Not as hard as it sounds, right? You can automate all this with a few simple steps. It's really not that difficult. And what does this allow me to do? Well, now I can ask the model, the little chat agent that we've set up. I can ask it questions like, what's the creditor claim deadline for a probate claim in the state of Missouri? And instead of like making up an answer from its, gigantic memory store training data set, which may or may not be exactly accurate, it will reference our vector database, and it will compare my question to the text of the statutes in the database and find the thing that answers my question. Not by keywords, not by like searching creditor claim deadline in the database. No, it's not looking for those words. It's looking for things that have similar meaning. Because if you look at Missouri's probate creditor claim deadline statute, it doesn't use the word deadline anywhere in the statute. But the model knows that a statute of limitations, or, a creditor has 1 year within which to file a creditor claim from the date of death. The model knows, because of the positioning of that data in the vector database, that deadline is very similar to, a creditor has 1 year to file a claim. Okay, so it can return the correct statute and the correct information, the answer to my question. And in fact, it will cite to the statute and the piece of text in the database in providing its answer. Okay, I'm just one guy, right? At a very small kind of micro boutique firm, and we were able to put this together in an afternoon, right? Now, obviously, what we build is very simple, and you can make much more complicated ones with much more information. these things that are embedding like entire case law databases, much bigger task, but it's the same basic concept. So now could you take this to contracts that you write, or, estate plan documents that you're writing, or pleadings that you want to generate in a particular type, or pleadings that you want to interpret and respond to, or contracts that you want to analyze? Well, you can embed all the stuff that you have in a vector database. You break it into little pieces, assign metadata to it, and then put it in the database, and then your model can ask questions of it and bring your data to life, right? And it's not limited to just your legal information. It could be your policy training manuals and procedures, or what's your PTO policy, or whatever. And you can put all this in a simple database and create a little chatbot that can look at it and provide those answers in real time to anybody who's asking. Now, there are lots of different tools out there for creating a product out of this and making it a little easier to put data in and create your own chatbots and stuff like that. But this is on a ground level how this stuff is done. And we did it directly and manually, but there are people that will sell these softwares and things like that. I haven't tried a lot of them, so I can't speak to their quality or efficacy, but it's very cool, kind of where we're at. So those are kind of the 5 levels of AI prompting. Just asking questions of a chatbot, is level 1. Level 2 is, prompt engineering, asking much more detailed, structured prompts. Level 3 is accessing AI and these models through the API, so programmatically or automatically accessing them through things like Zapier and Make. Very easy to integrate into your existing workflows if you have a little knowledge of Zapier and Make. Fine tuning, being refining the output so that it's going to be more reliable, and then embedding in vector databases. So basically, taking your knowledge, your proprietary knowledge, and creating it or turning it or converting it into a structure that a large language model can access and use. So very, very cool stuff. Or at least I think it's very cool. So where is this going? It is hard to say. I believe that we're going to see some dramatic changes in the way that law is practiced in the next 5 to 10 years. I think it's already changing rapidly. I know what it has for us, but I think the industry at large is going to start getting shaken awake over the next few years as these technologies continue to get more and more powerful. Sam Altman, the CEO of OpenAI, has already said that GPT-5 is under construction and will be done in the not too distant future. And he's described GPT-4 as a smart undergraduate student, I believe. If GPT-4 is a high school or undergraduate student, GPT-5 he described it as a PhD in everything. Okay. We're not that far off. We have people having genuine and serious conversations about how far away we are from artificial general intelligence, or AGI, a autonomous system that can think and perform human-like tasks without input. AI agents, they're calling them. And some people have already built these, where you just give it a general instruction of what you're trying to accomplish, and it will plan and execute the process on its own. Okay. And this is just within since November 22. Things are moving fast, folks. So take this stuff seriously. You got to be thinking about, what do I need to be doing today to position my practice to ride this wave, to stay out of harm's way if this stuff comes for my practice area or my industry. What do we need to be doing to position for this? So my advice right now is just to be learning as much as you can. Keep listening to this show. Find other information that you can on AI. Keep on top of it. Even if you're not as obsessed with it as I am, keep at least generally abreast of what's going on. Set up a Google alert or something of new things that are coming out. Monitor the announcements from companies like OpenAI and just see kind of what's going on, and where are we at, because it's going to be important for you to be able to keep a bead on it, both for keeping yourself ahead of the competition, but also for just knowing how you can integrate these things into your own practice, make your life a whole lot easier, and your practice a lot more productive and efficient. So self-educate. You can hire somebody if you need to. There are lots of people out there you can hire who are specialists in this area. Or who have a deep fascination with this area, and they can help you better integrate this stuff into your practice. But just ultimately, you got to be flexible and willing to learn. You can't stop learning because you're done with law school. You got to keep going. And the fact that you're listening to the show immediately puts you in the top 1% of 1% of attorneys for tech savvy. So keep listening. I encourage you to leave us a 5-star Google review on Apple Podcasts or wherever you listen to your podcasts. Those are very helpful in people finding the show. That's it for today. I appreciate it, guys. Thanks for listening. And we'll have John back next week. We've got some guests that we're starting to line up. So we'll start having some guests. If you are interested in being on the show, don't hesitate to reach out and let us know if you're interested, and we can set up a time, and we'll get back to you and see if there's a good fit for a collaboration. Okay. So until next time, folks, talk to you again soon.